The courtroom went silent when the judge asked him to sign his name again, and the forged flourish crumbled right there under oath. I didn't gloat. I just breathed, knowing quiet power had finally spoken. That day, I learned some justice doesn't shout. It documents. My name is Laretha Jo Hemsworth, 68, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. I've seen enough storms roll through to know which clouds bring rain. That October evening, the sky over Atlanta hung heavy as I drove to meet my daughter's fiancé for the first time. The restaurant, Golden Lotus, had one of those glowing signs that looked too expensive for its own good inside. The air smelled like jasmine tea and soy glaze, the kind of place that pretends quiet is class. My church shoes pinched, but I walked in straight-backed. Neela spotted me first, waving that bright, proud smile. "Mom, you made it," she said, hugging me quick before turning to him, Arlen Zhao. He stood, crisp and polite, every gesture rehearsed. "Mrs. Hemsworth, a pleasure," he said with a voice slick as marble. I shook his hand and thought, this one practices in mirrors. My late husband, Wesley, used to tell me, read the room before you read the man. So I did. He wore a watch too heavy for a schoolteacher and shoes that hadn't met a scuff in their lives. We sat, and he launched into conversation. Savannah gardens, church choirs, travel plans. He spoke in polished paragraphs, each line smoother than the last. When I mentioned my azaleas, he nodded like he'd memorized the gesture. "Nyla tells me you're quite the homemaker," he said, smiling too wide. I smiled back. "Well, I keep things alive. That's what counts." He laughed, the kind of laugh that checks who's watching before it starts. When the waiter came, he ordered for all of us. "Trust me," he said, "the house special never disappoints." I don't recall anyone asking him to be my mouthpiece, but I kept my manners. Southern women don't lose composure. We weaponize it. Then came the moment that rewrote the night. He leaned toward the server, voice lowering, then turned to Neela and slipped into Mandarin. The rhythm sharpened, the tone, casual yet cutting. The words rolled out. "Old pig, doesn't understand, so stupid." Clear as day, I'd spent a year volunteering at a community center teaching English. I knew what I heard. My heart didn't race. It froze. I reached for my tea, the cup trembling just enough to remind me I was still human. "Baby," I said to Neela, "pass me that pot, will you?" My voice was steady, sugar over steel. Arlen smiled politely, unaware I'd just added his name to a list I never write twice. People think disrespect whispered in another tongue disappears. They forget. Silence has memory. I shifted the balance without a word, excusing myself. I returned and took the seat at the head of the table. "Just easier for my knees," I said. Then I asked about his parents' first years in America. He stumbled through a polished tale, small gaps opening like cracks in cheap porcelain. I nodded kindly, the way a woman does when she's already decided you're not family yet. When the bill came, he reached for it. "I'll handle it later," he offered. I laid down cash, exact change. "No need, sweetheart, I still pay for what I eat." He blinked, smile faltering just long enough for me to see the boy beneath the posture. Outside, the city hummed, a saxophone echoing from somewhere far off. Nayla caught my arm. "Mom, don't make it a big deal. You misheard. He was joking." "Baby," I said softly. "My ears are just fine. They've been catching lies longer than you've been catching boyfriends." Her eyes flashed hurt. "You always look for something wrong." I let the words hang. "Maybe I just see what you can't yet." I hugged her, breathing in her perfume. Young, floral, unaware. "I'm driving home tonight. We'll talk when I've rested." Hours later, back on my Savannah porch, the crickets were louder than my thoughts. My nephew Deontay Parker called on FaceTime, his voice sharp with worry. "Auntie, you okay?" Somebody posted a screenshot from Arlen's group chat. He showed me. Arlen's words stared back in plain English. "Keep the old lady out of money talk." Sent minutes after dinner. The same contempt. Just translated. I saved the image, labeled it by date, forwarded it to myself 3 times. "Thank you, baby," I told Deontay. "And keep that phone charged." When the call ended, I turned off the porch light. Wesley's last letter sat framed by my chair. "Don't let silence be your prison," I whispered. "I'm not." Then I opened the drawer, pulled out my old digital recorder, pressed the red button till it glowed steady. Next time, he wouldn't just hear my voice. He'd hear the truth in stereo. The next evening, I found myself riding the elevator up to the Peachtree Exchange rooftop in Midtown Atlanta. The doors opened to a blur of city lights, champagne flutes, and people talking too loud to hide their nerves. A rooftop full of climbers pretending they weren't afraid of heights. Neela gripped my hand as we stepped out. "Mom, just be yourself," she whispered, and I could feel the tremor in her palm. She wasn't protecting me. She was bracing herself. Arlen glided toward us, all confidence and charm. He greeted a group of men in suits before turning to me. "This is Neela's mom from Savannah," he said. My name was right there, waiting to be used, but he cut it like it was clutter. I smiled anyway. I looked around, watching who nodded at servers, who looked through them. I always notice who holds doors and who thinks others should. "Evening, y'all," I said warmly. "That view'll preach." My accent softened their edges. A few smiled back, polite but curious. It didn't take long for the mask to slip. A young man, maybe one of Arlen's associates, nudged him and laughed. "Tell that dinner story," he said, and Arlen did, turning my quiet dignity into punchlines. She didn't understand a word. "Bless her heart," he said, drawing out the southern phrase like it was seasoning. Laughter rippled through the group. Some looked uncomfortable. Others followed the sound. I stood still, my face set in the kind of smile people mistake for forgiveness. Inside, something colder formed. Then, in Mandarin, he added a few words, quick and quiet. I didn't need to translate. The tone alone carried cruelty. 2 guests snickered. I placed my glass down carefully so it wouldn't tremble. Nala's hand brushed my arm. "He didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "Please, not tonight." She wanted to protect peace that wasn't hers to keep. I looked at her, then back at the crowd. "Sweetheart," I said softly. "Peace built on pretending is just silence in a prettier dress." She turned away before I could finish. I stepped toward the terrace rail. The city shimmered below, all ambition and noise. "Respect doesn't need translation, Mo," I said quietly. Neela sighed, her voice small. "He's nervous. These events are dumb." "Nervous," I said. "Don't make a man rewrite my name." Arlen appeared with champagne, his smile too perfect. "Everything all right, ladies?" he asked, voice dripping with host polish. "Fine," I said. "Just adjusting to the altitude." He laughed like he understood. He didn't. When he pulled out an iPad later, talking about transparency, my instincts sharpened. Tabs opened with neat labels: vendors, venue, joint fund, contingency. Numbers slid by too easily. "Just so you feel comfortable," he said. "We're keeping everything streamlined." I scrolled and paused at Zhao Partners LLC custodian. "Honey," I asked gently, "who audits your transfers?" He smiled, brushing off the question like lint. "All industry standard, Mrs. Hemsworth." But he still hadn't said which bank. I caught the faintest flicker of another tab, something marked post-wedding disbursements. I returned the iPad, smiling sweetly. "You're very organized," I said. "Almost too much so." His eyes narrowed a fraction before he turned back to the crowd. The evening thickened with subtle cuts, little comments about generational differences and modern finance. I caught them all. A woman asked if I was comfortable in the city at night. I answered with a grin. "Baby, I've seen 3 recessions and 1 pandemic. I think I'll manage a rooftop." A few nearby guests laughed softly, grateful someone else said what they were thinking. Later, at the hotel cafe, I called Evelina Brooks, my old friend and attorney. "He's charming a crowd while mapping my money," I said. Evelina chuckled. "Then make the paper sing, not scream. Ask for written links. custodial details and bank letters. No screenshots, no Zelle, no verbal agreements. I took notes in my planner. Every word deliberate. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm old, not blind." By the time I hit the highway back to Savannah, my anger had cooled into focus. The road hummed under my tires. Then my phone buzzed. A calendar invite from Arlen titled, "Budget Alignment Mandatory Screen Share." Minutes later, another notification. My access to the shared file changed to editor. I hadn't asked for that. Someone wanted me to type something. Leave a trail. I pulled over, screenshotted everything, sent copies to Evelina, and backed them up twice. At a gas station near Macon, I opened the cached version of his spreadsheet. The footer read, "Zhao Partners, capital intake, Rev D, not a wedding budget, a recycled business document." I whispered the file name into my recorder, the glow from my dashboard flickering across my reflection. "When people recycle a lie," I murmured, "they always leave a corner of the original label." Dawn hadn't even cracked the blinds when I poured my first cup of coffee and opened my laptop. The file still sat there, waiting, its title blinking like a dare. "Zhao Partners, capital intake, Rev D." My cursor hovered over the version history. An older editor tag popped up, a name that didn't belong to Arlen or Nyla. The timestamp read months before they'd even met. I jotted every line into my notebook. Entity name, revision letter, last editor string. I said them aloud for my recorder, proof locked in my voice. Wesley used to say, "If the label changes, the recipe didn't." I intended to find the original recipe at the Savannah Public Library. I slid into one of the old computer cubicles that smelled like dust and truth. I typed "Zhao Partners LLC" into Georgia's business registry, then Washington's, then Nevada's. Each variation carried the same address under slightly altered spellings. Zhao, Joe, Zaho, a digital shell game. My heart beat steady, not fast. I'd spent years balancing church budgets. Deceit shows its face in numbers before it shows anywhere else. 3 years back, a Seattle forum mentioned an intake sheet that looked identical to the one in front of me, used for bridge capital investments that never bridged anywhere. I printed everything, highlighted recurring addresses, and stapled them like legal hymns. Outside, I called Evelina Brooks, my old friend and attorney. She answered with her morning rasp. "If he's clean," she said, "he'll welcome escrow. Ask him for it." I smiled. "Honey, that'll tell us faster than any sermon." Before driving off, I phoned the bank listed on his spreadsheet. The clerk said politely, "We don't offer that product." I thanked her and called a wedding venue listed under Nyla's name. The coordinator sounded confused. "We haven't quoted anyone by that name, ma'am." That told me everything. I drafted a short email to Arlen, crisp and civil, requesting escrow details and custodian information. I BCC'd Evelina, paper talks, and I was done whispering. By dusk, I parked outside Nyla's apartment. I'd brought supper, fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread. Southern mothers make peace offerings shaped like home. She came down barefoot, her scarf tilted, her face both proud and scared. "Mom," she sighed, "is this about last night?" "No, baby," I said softly. "It's about tomorrow." I handed her the container and sat on the hood of my car. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to listen if you'll talk." She nodded, arms crossed. I slid 2 pages from the folder. No more, no less. "Tell me where I'm wrong." Her brow furrowed as she read the Seattle complaint. The words "same intake sheet, same custodian name." She swallowed hard. "He said it's a friend's template, industry thing." "Standard for what, sweetheart?" I asked. She searched her phone, scrolling like the answer might text itself. Silence filled the parking lot until the cicadas took pity on us. Then she looked up, eyes sharp. "Mom, are you doing this because he's Chinese? You never dated outside your circle." The words sliced cleaner than anger. They sounded rehearsed, fed to her by someone else. I inhaled slowly. "Baby, this isn't about who he is. It's about what he's doing." My tone stayed even. I'd learned to let truth hold its own volume. I laid it plain. No escrow, no money, No verified bank officer, no money, venue contract in your name, or the wallet stays closed. She stepped back. He'll say you're trying to control me. I smiled faintly. Then he can pay for the wedding he's controlling. The cicadas roared, loud enough to count as applause. She hugged the food against her chest, whispering, You don't trust anyone. I trust paper, I said. Paper doesn't lie. Before leaving, I said, Sunday dinner at my house. Bring him. We'll talk like family. She hesitated, typing slowly on her phone. He's busy, but I'll ask. I nodded. Busy can still be honest. On the way home, I slipped my recorder into my purse. Not to trap him, just to keep memory obedient. I called Evelina. Sunday, I said, my table. Then, she replied, let's set it right. Halfway down the highway, my phone buzzed, a screenshot from Nyla, accidentally forwarded to me. Arlen's text glared back. We'll go. Smile. Let me talk. She's easy. I read it twice. Let the sting settle. Then whispered. When a man tells you who he is in private, believe the punctuation. By 5 o'clock, my house smelled like collards and roasted chicken. The table was dressed with cornbread, china from my mother, and a quiet confidence that filled the air thicker than any sermon. On the sideboard, in plain sight, sat my small digital recorder, legal in Georgia and already blinking red. Ground rules, I said as I set down the sweet tea. No shouting, no blame, and if we talk money, we use full sentences and full truth. 3 folders waited at the center. Escrow, bank officer, venue contract. I wasn't setting a trap, I was setting order. When the doorbell rang, I smoothed my apron and whispered the kind of prayer church mothers use before walking into fire. Arlen stepped in first, hand firm on Nyla's back like he was guiding property through a doorway. Mailing followed, eyes quick, cataloging family photos. Lovely home, Miss H., Arlen said with a practiced grin. Laretha, I corrected. We use whole names here. The correction hit softer than a slap, but landed just the same. He laughed. Awkward. I led them to the table and pointed to the side chair beside Neela, not the head. Guests first, I said. He sat, adjusting his cufflinks. I bowed my head for grace. Lord, thank you for truth that keeps families standing. When I opened my eyes, his didn't meet mine. Dinner began with the rhythm of polite chewing. Then Arlen leaned toward Mei-ling, whispering in Mandarin, a sharp tone under soft words. I caught just enough to know mockery when I heard it. Simple house, simple woman, I translated inwardly. I set my fork down. Y'all can speak any language you like, I said, calm as rain. Just make sure you use my name while you do. He froze. Mei-ling's face pinked. I nodded toward the recorder. Georgia's one-party consent law, I said evenly. And I'm that party. Nyla's breath caught, the sound small but heavy. The air thinned until even the cornbread basket looked nervous. I turned the page. Literally. The escrow folder slid forward. No family funds, I said, until a verified escrow agreement and named bank officer exist. I called Evelina Brooks on speaker. Evening, Miss Hemsworth, she said, voice half Sunday, half courtroom. Arlen straightened like a man about to face a test he hadn't studied for. Mr. Zhao, Evelina began, please confirm your bank officer's name. He gave a title instead. She waited. Silence filled the table, sharp as vinegar. No screenshots, she continued. Letters only. Independent venue contract in Miss Hemsworth's name. Nyla whispered. Babe? Her voice broke on the second syllable. Arlen smiled thinly. We're modernizing old systems, I replied. Then modernization needs a paper trail. That's when Mei-ling made her mistake. Trying to smooth things. She opened the iPad, flashing the file's title before quickly renaming it. Zhao Partners. Capital intake, Rev D, became wedding budget. I repeated it aloud, careful and slow. Capital intake, Rev D. Arlen's jaw worked. Legacy naming quirk, he said, a salesman's joke searching for laughter. Evelina didn't laugh. Then Legacy can send escrow confirmation tonight, I asked. Who is Baird? Capital Ops? The name from my screenshots hung in the air. His smile thinned further, color draining from his face. When words failed him, he pivoted to sentiment. "Your mother doesn't like me," he told Nyla. "How can I marry into suspicion?" I leaned back, folded my hands. "You could try marrying into transparency." Nyla blinked. Tears caught but not shed. Mailing murmured, "In our culture, families trust the groom." I nodded. "In mine, families verify." Evelina's email pinged. I printed the escrow form from my laptop and slid it across. "Fill it out," I said. "Names, dates, banks." He didn't move. On the porch later, Arlen gripped the rail tight. "You're killing the joy," he hissed. I turned to Nyla instead. "Baby, love isn't a GoFundMe," I said softly. The street was still, but for cicadas and the creak of the swing chain. Nyla's shoulders sagged. "Okay, Mama, she whispered. "Paper first?" I squeezed her hand. "Paper always." Through the glass, Arlen's phone lit up. A message flashed backward in reflection on my hutch. "Baird, Capital Ops intake deck ready for Monday pitch." My pulse didn't rise. I just exhaled, steady as prayer. Weddings don't need intake decks, only investors do. Just before midnight, my inbox chimed with a sound that never meant peace. The subject line read, "Deck, Final." And though I wasn't on the original thread, my address had slipped in under a blind copy. I opened it, slow and steady, on slide 3. I saw my own name, L.J. Hemsworth, LP, in-kind collateral, residential. My house, my retirement, my life's work now typed as someone else's leverage. Slide 6 broke my heart more than it shocked me. Use of proceeds, venue hold, vendor float, the same words Nyla used to describe her dream wedding. They'd weaponized her hope into a sales pitch. At the bottom, the cursed line, Zhao Partners, Capital Intake, Rev D. I didn't cry. I hit print. PDFs, screenshots, timestamps. I whispered, "Paper first, feelings later." I forwarded the email to Evelina Brooks with the subject line, "Potential Identity Misuse," attaching headers and IP data. Then I pulled out an old thumb drive, the silver one Wesley once used for church ledgers, and labeled it Rev D, 017 AM. Chain of custody, old school. I opened a screen recorder, scrolled every slide, captured the cursor movement. Proof of continuity. My desk lamp hummed while I highlighted my property deed. No encumbrances. I wrote a one-page timeline, from Sunday dinner to midnight, noting every opportunity they had to edit and send. At 12:43, Evelina replied, "Hold steady. If they escalate, we go from phone calls to letters." I smiled at the glow of her message. I had no reason to fear letters. Morning light crept through blinds like quiet judgment. At 7:42 a.m., Nyla forwarded an email titled, "Congrats, escrow opened." The logo looked perfect, but something in me twitched. The domain had a tiny swap, escrow centers. Calm. I called her immediately. "Baby, read that address out loud." Halfway through, she gasped. "The R wasn't an R," I told her. "That's not a typo. That's a trap." She whispered. "He said it was automated." "Then why's it dated last night?" I said. I took screenshots. WHOIS records and DNS creation stamps registered less than 10 hours ago. Evelina's voice through the phone was low and precise. "Reply only with 'please have our bank officer call me.'" Nothing else. I made Nyla repeat it twice until her voice carried steel instead of shame. By noon, I was in Atlanta again. The parking deck baked heat through my shoes. Nyla came down, eyes swollen but posture upright. I handed her the 2 printed slides, my name under LP and in-kind collateral. She traced the letters with trembling fingers. "He said it's placeholder language," she murmured. "Baby," I said, "and placeholders don't include someone's home address." Her silence was an answer I didn't need to hear. Together, we rehearsed her line. "Escrow, named bank officer, venue contract in my name, no decks." She nodded, texting Arlen in real time. The typing bubble appeared, vanished, reappeared, stalling, always stalling. I hugged her, brief but firm. "We're done reacting," I said. "Now we act?" Back in my car, Evelina texted. Found it, mine attached was a screenshot of the deck's notes section. Tiny gray text reading, "LP consent on file." My stomach turned cold. I'd never signed a thing. I pulled up my digital signature archive from past closings, every legitimate mark of mine stored for decades. We drafted a no-consent letter on my letterhead, clear, dated, plain English. No authority granted for use of name, property, or assets. Evelina sent it to Arlen and every address copied on slide 12. I added one sentence she didn't edit. This mother will not be your line of credit. An hour later, another email arrived. The fake escrow domain again. This time labeled Final Reminder. I typed a response myself. Please provide your FINRA CRD, escrow trust account number, and bank officer NMLS for verification. Within minutes, the entire site went dark. 404 error. I captured screenshots of its disappearance. When predators run, you've hit the truth. Arlen texted Nyla, your mother's turning this into a courtroom. I took her phone gently and replied, good. Courthouses love documents. By afternoon, Melling posted a photo on social media. Her and Nyla at brunch, champagne glasses up, captioned, grateful for family who believes. I didn't engage. I archived it. URL and timestamp saved. Neela sighed, wanting to comment, but I said, baby, let paper clap for you. We gave them 48 hours, escrow proof, or nothing moves. I slid my deed copy and the no consent letter into the top drawer by the front door. My grandmother called it the company manners drawer, where you keep reminders for guests who forget theirs. That night, my phone rang again. A deep voice introduced himself as a bank officer from the real institution Arlen had named. Ma'am, he said, we have no escrow under any of these names, but a gentleman did inquire about opening one this morning. I smiled. Not kindly. Bless his heart, I said softly. He finally went looking for a bank. I'd already found a judge. By the time the sun dropped behind the marsh, the Savannah Community Arts Center buzzed like a church before service. I arrived early with Neela, her violin case clutched like armor. The foyer banner stopped me cold. Bold letters. Hemsworth Zhao Fund, venue partners. My name glued to theirs like consent. The program footer read, presented by L.J. Hemsworth Foundation, a foundation that never existed. A QR code shimmered beside it. I scanned it, landing on a payment page tied to Arlen's company. Parents waved, thanking me for supporting the youth. I smiled politely, snapping photos of every sign, every square reader, every program. When mailing glided in, Silk whispering, I caught her murmuring to a donor. Family backing secured. I squeezed Neela's hand. Baby, breathe. Let the paper speak first. Mrs. Cutler from the HOA appeared with 2 clipboard men. Miss Hemsworth, we received an anonymous complaint, unpermitted event parking at your residence. Fines escalate after tonight. The smug precision of her voice almost made me laugh. I reached into my purse, unfolded the no consent letter, and handed it over. This event isn't at my home, I said. Calm as iced tea. Then I showed ring cam stills of my empty driveway, time-stamped and neat. Evelina had texted the city code section earlier, and I quoted it word for word. Mrs. Cutler blinked, color draining. Oh, well, this must be a mistake, I finished. She nodded, retreating. From across the lobby, Mealing's smile froze like a mask left too long in the sun. Neela leaned close. They wanted to rattle you, I said. They'll get a record instead. The lights dimmed. The MC took the stage and announced, tonight's recital is brought to you by our generous venue partners, the Hemsworth Zhao Fund. The spotlight swung toward me. Gasps. I stood. Voice steady. Correction. I have not funded this event. Silence spread like a crack through glass. Mealing rushed forward, grabbing the mic. An administrative mix-up, she said, smiling too wide. Laretha is simply too humble to take credit. I sat down. Humility's free, I murmured. Fraud costs extra. I airdropped the QR screenshot to Evelina with one line. Live misrepresentation. Timestamp 6:48 p.m. At intermission, I asked for a side room. Arlen followed, Mealing close behind, Nyla trailing between us like a child caught in storm wind. I placed my phone face up, recording light red and unapologetic. Out came the printed deck, the spoofed escrow header, and my deed. Did you send this deck to solicit funds, I asked? He smirked. Business plans circulate. Did you label my home as collateral? I pressed. He chuckled. Whispering in Mandarin to Meiling, I answered in his tongue, clean and firm. Let's stay in English for the record. His face drained of color. Placeholder language, he muttered. I slid the no consent letter across the table. Not anymore, Neela whispered. Take my mother's name off everything. Today. I tapped my phone and the dinner recording played. His voice, unmistakable. Old pig. Easy target. Collateral is cleaner. The Mandarin words filled the air, followed by his English from that same night. Syrup sweet. Miss Laretha, honored to join the family. The contradiction cracked through the room like thunder. Meiling hissed. Recording family is petty. I looked at her, voice low. Recording business is prudent? Nyla's eyes filled, but her voice didn't shake. You mocked my mother in 2 languages. Arlen tried to laugh. It was a joke. I paused the audio on the word collateral and let silence deliver the verdict. Then my phone rang. I answered on speaker. Mr. Drexel, the man said. I reviewed the materials your attorney sent. There's no escrow, no bank officer, and I've withdrawn my investment. I asked softly. Did Arlen present my home as collateral? Slide 3, he confirmed. Mealing lunged for the phone. I stepped aside. Arlen's mask cracked. You're burning bridges, he spat. I said, son, bridges built on my land don't belong to you. We stepped back into the lobby. Parents whispered, eyes darting between me and the banner. I approached the MC. Take it down, I said simply. He obeyed. Mrs. Cutler returned, offering an awkward apology for the earlier confusion. Documentation's a wonderful thing, I replied. Neela walked to the mic. Any materials naming my mother as funder are unauthorized. Please remove them. Her voice carried like truth in stereo. Arlen tried to spin a closing speech. The crowd turned away. The square reader vanished quietly from the table. I handed Arlen a sealed envelope. Preservation notice, I said. Cease and desist. Evelina mailed copies at noon. Meiling's smile twitched. You wouldn't sue family. I met her eyes. I would never sue family, but I don't owe kindness to a con. The morning after the recital felt like the air itself was holding its breath. I brewed chicory coffee, dark and steady, while spreading the evidence across my kitchen table. Photos of the banner, printed QR codes, square screenshots, my no consent letter, and last night's recording timestamps. The smell of coffee mixed with the faint echo of applause still in my ears. Neela stirred on the couch, her face soft but resolved. Mom, what's our next move? That single word, our, hit deeper than any apology. I outlined the plan. Control the story with truth. Shield the neighbors from HOA crossfire. Protect the Arts Center's reputation without covering their mistake, and hand every shred of proof to Evelina. Nyla drafted a parent update. Factual and kind, I forwarded the documents to Evelina, who texted back, Your packet's clean. Calm tone wins more than fury. A new message blinked from Arlen. We can fix this. Family first. I took a screenshot. No reply. Dishes stayed in the sink. That mess felt honest. At 8:30, the phone rang again, Jenna Ortiz from the Savannah Ledger. Miss Hemsworth. 2 versions of last night are circulating. I spoke like reading from court notes. No adjectives, no defense. Just timestamps and truth. I emailed her 1 PDF, banner photos, the program footer, QR page, device ID, and my written correction to the MC. I copied the Arts Center, not for spite, but transparency. Protect the kids' names, I told her, and print my quote in full or not at all. She paused. Why speak now, I said. Because silence turns into an alibi for the loudest liar. She promised balance. When I hung up, Neela said, You sounded like a lawyer. I smiled. Habit, it keeps me from bleeding in public. By mid-morning, the Arts Center's foyer glowed in harsh daylight. 2 board members greeted us. Polite but distant, until Jenna walked in behind me. Pen ready. Suddenly, every smile softened. I handed the chair a labeled folder, unauthorized use of name and likeness. I laid out my 3 requests: remove the fund's name, notify donors, issue a procedural correction. No applause needed, only accuracy. One trustee muttered about liability exposure. I answered, "Correction is cheaper than litigation." The chair's tone shifted instantly. "We'll post by 3. As Nyla and I turned to leave, Mailing stood near the elevator, dark glasses and a phone pressed to her cheek, whispering in Mandarin. I didn't need translation. Outside, parents lingered in the parking lot, worried the recital's continuation might be canceled. I reassured them. The kids play on, the adults clean up. A teacher hugged me, eyes wet. "We'll rebuild right." Nyla grinned faintly. "No more VIP rows. Everyone's a neighbor." The moral weather cleared, like sunlight after summer rain. We made our next stop at First Emmanuel. Pastor Hollis welcomed us with burnt coffee and quiet grace. I told him the story, brief but whole, showing him the letter and transcript, no recordings in sacred space. He nodded. "Truth doesn't need reverb, it needs records," Nyla whispered. I almost believed him. Pastor smiled sadly. "Belief isn't foolish, child. It's trusting until proof teaches better." His blessing lingered on my coat when we left. By noon, my phone buzzed with a headline from the Ledger. Arts Center corrects fund attribution after governance review, neutral tone, side-by-side photos of the banner and my statement. The board's post followed, measured, factual. Scrubbed of Arlen and Mailing's names, donor comments showed refunds, then new donations routed directly to the music program. Mrs. Cutler from the HOA posted her apology, attaching my ring cam stills as best practices, Evelina texted. Soft power achieved, now for the paper trail. Meanwhile, Arlen's post about cultural misunderstanding gathered replies asking, "Then why use her house as collateral?" The digital applause died mid-thread. At the courthouse, Evelina met us with a Redwell marked Hemsworth v. Zhao. Inside, square payout logs, domain registration, and a side-by-side signature overlay proving forgery. We filed motions for preservation, injunction, and deceptive practice. The DA's intake clerk asked if Neela wanted victim services. I said yes. Emotional targeting counts too. On our way out, a process server passed us, 2 envelopes in hand on the courthouse steps. Neela turned to me, sunlight catching the curve of her jaw. "If he calls," she said, "I'll tell him. This is my mother's porch, not your project." She deleted the old voice notes of him coaching her. Exhaling like someone reclaiming air. "I kept quiet," I said softly, "to see your choice. I won't mistake silence for permission again." She nodded, eyes bright with something new. Peace, shaped like resolve. The process server called names across the plaza. Arlen Zhao, Mailing Zhao. They turned, startled. Papers served right there under the courthouse flag. Evelina opened her phone, showing me an email from a boutique firm accusing me of malicious bias. She smiled. "They just handed us their defense." I breathed in deep savanna air, slow and sure. "Let them bring light," I said. "I've already set the table." The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old wood polish. I sat between Evelina and Nyla, my folder of exhibits balanced on my knees like a shield. The bailiff called the matter, his voice echoing through the small hearing room. The judge, calm but sharp-eyed, outlined the scope, injunctive relief, name and likeness protection, preservation of every digital asset tied to the QR campaign. Evelina rose, deliberate as a sermon. She listed each exhibit, square payout logs, a registrar WHOIS data, the redirect maps, and the overlay showing the forged escrow officer's signature matched to a stock font. I spoke only once, confirming that I never gave consent and that bilingual slurs were background, not basis. The harm was deception, plain and filed, across the aisle. Arlen stiffened. Mailing leaned into their lawyer, whispering, objection, overruled. When the judge requested metadata timestamps, I could see the truth forming in her eyes. Nyla's fingers found mine. I nodded, anchored. Arlen swore in. His tie trembled more than his voice. Evelina asked who purchased the domain, who authorized the Square account, who edited the recital banner. He called it a team effort. She produced admin logs tied to his IP, time stamped between rehearsal nights. He blinked hard, the room silent but for the whir of the ceiling fan. The judge asked him to reproduce the signature on a blank page. His hand hesitated. The flourish came out crooked. The court tech placed it beside the digital copy. No match. The forensic report confirmed it. Fake, deliberate. Mailing spoke up. I believed approvals existed. Evelina slid out my no-consent email, time-stamped before the first print order. The judge leaned back, voice steady. The record will reflect material misrepresentation. I didn't smile. Some victories should stay quiet. The ruling came swift but precise. Injunction granted. Immediate removal of all mislabeled materials. Prohibition on using the Hemsworth name for sponsorship. Mandatory donor corrections within 72 hours. The judge ordered costs for enforcement and warned of sanctions for any tampering. Her gavel tapped once. Light, almost kind. Evelina placed a hand on my arm. Order feels better than revenge, she whispered. I believed her. Outside in the marble lobby, Jenna Ortiz lifted her recorder. Any comment, Miss Hemsworth? I gave her 2 sentences. The arts belong to the children. Facts fix what pride breaks. Behind us, the Arts Center's updated post went live. Banner removed. Refund link visible. Corrected donor list public. Misses. Cutler approached. Apology letter in trembling hands. I'll standardize porch contact policy, she offered. Good, I said. Fairness should be contagious. Rain streaked the lobby glass. For the first time all week, it sounded like peace. By dusk, we gathered on my porch. Pastor Hollis, Neela, 2 parents from the recital. The air smelled of lemon oil and dew. I read aloud a single-page boundary agreement I'd typed the night before. Access rules, money rules, daylight only. Nyla signed beside me, and I handed her 2 keys, front door and shed, trust renewed, but earned. Pastor prayed in lists, truth, mercy, receipts, rest. When we said amen, I felt something shift. Not an ending, but an unclenching. After they left, I boxed every exhibit by date, labeling the lids like chapters. One envelope I sealed separately, the transcript of that cruel dinner, marked, "Open only if I forget who I am." On the mantel, I replaced the dented wall spot with Nyla's old recital photo, her first violin. Tooth missing, joy intact. My phone buzzed. The Arts Center confirming corrections sent to donors. Early. Evelina texted. We'll handle damages Monday. Tonight, breathe. Later. As the street lamps hummed on, a final email arrived. Malling's apology. Short, careful. Full of phrases like unfortunate oversight. I archived it unread. Arlen's midnight post followed. Misunderstood intentions. The comments didn't buy it. They asked for accountability, not pity. The Arts Center invited me to join their governance panel. I declined and donated music stands under my name instead. Then I revised my will. Charities, not families, get my bequests. The pen glided smooth as rainwater on the porch. I poured one last cup of chicory and watched Nyla hum through the screen door. Quiet isn't surrender, I whispered. It's aim. The neighborhood lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere down the block, a child practiced violin, the same song that once carried our name. I smiled, knowing she'd never have to learn why it mattered. A soft thud interrupted the calm. A green certified mail card slid under my door. I bent to read it. Acknowledgement of service, Jow Council, settlement talks. I placed it beside a lemon on the credenza. Some papers start wars, some close them. This one, I knew, marked the end. Tomorrow could come. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I glanced at the unopened envelope beside the lemon, its seal now damp from the night air. Inside could be peace, or another storm wearing polite stationery. I took a breath, reached for the letter opener, then stopped. What if truth wasn't done talking yet?